Good evening.
Hello, everybody.
Hi
Welcome
Hello.
everyone.
to our lore talks. With me tonight, we have um, the star, I suppose, Scarlet, talking about Amaylea. We have Lorianne, who plays Callie, and we have Morgan, who plays Serafina. We're all gonna just kind of hang out and chat. We got a lot of content to go through, but I'm gonna leave it mostly up to Scarlet of what she wants to talk about. Most important to Amaylea tonight. So yeah, take it away.
Hi everybody. Um, I feel like okay. Um, Amelia is probably okay. I feel like we have to start like freaking what 3 years
Start at the
ago,
beginning. We'll start at the
The very
beginning, like her
beginning.
young life, childhood.
right? I
In the
mean
beginning, I
like
was born.
she
I think she
had
means the beginning of her playing in
yeah.
general.
Because Amelia is the first D&D character that I've ever played in my entire life.
Hmm.
And I started that journey, God, like probably 3 or 4 years ago now. 3? I feel like 3.
Oh,
Um,
I see what you're saying. You're going back 3 years in the sense of like you, the person, not Amelia.
right.
I'm with you now.
So it's kind of like she definitely was um, influential to me, um, mainly because um, I got to really um, kind of explore what that character like meant to me in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
Um, so it's been really cool to like grow with her, not only as like a player, but also as like character development and how certain things would like play out. So I've really liked that part, quote unquote, of the journey.
Hmm.
um, but basically, um, the beginning of her life was actually pretty chill for the most part. Because she was born to a Duke and Duchess of the Kingdom of Hermonsa. So she was raised as a nobleman's daughter for the first 7 to 8 years of her life.
Hmm.
Um, so um, basically, she was born, I think, at this point around like close to anywhere from like 27 to 30 years ago. I feel like a lot of us don't actually give like a direct age of our
Your
characters,
kids,
Yeah.
yes.
our children. Yeah. So basically, she was born during an eclipse at its full coverage. And when she came out, like she wasn't crying, and she came out very like peacefully. And her mother took that as like an omen of hope that her daughter was going to bring like change to Formosa. Um, but her father, on the other hand, saw it as like a horrible omen, basically, um, and basically formulated a plan that he was going to abandon her at a temple of Retris in the north. And so um, when she was ultimately taken at like 7 years old, before that, being raised as like a noble's daughter, she was kind of raised a lot at the palace because her father was constantly called in to like make sure that everything was going well in the land and everything like that. And so um, she developed a relationship with like she didn't really have a great relationship with the other noble children, um, but she kind of developed like a really good friendship with um, Magnus, who is the Prince of Formosa, and we'll jump into that a little bit later. Um, but they became really good friends, constantly teased each other, and she never really saw him as like a prince, but just like another person her age. Um, so basically, when she was 7 years old, her father basically like came up with a plan to take her away in the middle of the night, without her mother or her siblings knowing. So when she was taken, it was basically like Amelia's mother discovered that obviously she was not there the next morning. So she basically put out a reward for finding her husband because she knew that he had like done something. He basically like kept evading capture, and as far as like everyone knew, he was still alive. Um, so she was abandoned at the front doorstep of the Temple of Retris in the north, um, at 7, and she didn't really like understand. But basically, they found her kind of like shriveled up, crying, um, and so they took her into the Temple of Retris, um, and uh, slowly like her magical abilities started to come. But when she was newly brought to the temple of Retris, there was an attack on the temple by people that we come to know later as the Sons of the Divine. Um, and essentially, while she was trying to run away from an attacker, she tripped. And when she turned to look at him, she saw him basically like raising a sword to kill her. Um, and then like suddenly she saw a flash of a woman with dark black hair, um, standing in front of her, and then the man like crumpled to the ground in front of her dead. And when she stood up shakily, um, she didn't know who had like saved her life. It wasn't until later where she saw depictions of the goddess Retris that she came to believe that it had to be Retris who had saved her life. Um, so she basically, from that moment on, was like, I'm going to dedicate my life to her because she saved mine. Um, and Retris is a pretty much like generally, she is a not highly regarded, let's just say it like that, goddess.
She's disliked because she's feared.
Yes,
Mm.
and she's very cold to humanity. So her temple, she only had one, and it was in the north. In previous like centuries and stuff, all of the gods were pretty much like regarded, but Tanera now is the most commonly worshipped. So when she became like a cleric of Retris, um, she was pretty much told like not a lot of people are going to regard you highly, and know that. So
They may even just hate you on principle.
yeah, straight up. She basically at 18 in the Temple of Retris, when you turn 18, you go on this thing called the pilgrimage. Now, granted, this is not the same pilgrimage that Opame has. Um, Instead, basically, what they do is they go on a pilgrimage to the main Temple of Retris. That's like all the way up in the mountains of the north. And you're supposed to get to the top of this super tall mountain, and there's like a stack of rocks. And basically, the belief is that you add your rock to get closer to the moon, right? So that's basically what your pilgrimage is. You go and you put your rock on the top of this mountain, and then you're basically declaring to Retris like, I'm going to try and get closer to you, and I did this whole journey to prove that, right? So she teamed up with another cleric who was her age, and his name was Donar. Um, it was actually what she considered her like first actual like love, because they had been together for majority of their life. Um, and she became very attached to him. Nothing ever really came out of like that friendship, like nothing physical, I guess. They never actually became like in a
A
relationship.
romantic relationship.
Yeah. Um, so basically, they made it successfully to the temple and put their rocks and did all of that. And on their way back from that trip, they were attacked by wraiths. Um, and Donar was attacked by one before it just like disappeared. And Amaylea was unable to save him using her magic. Um, and so that was probably one of her more traumatic events that really spurred her on to become who she is now. Um, and so basically, when she returned back to the Temple of Retris, she dedicated all of her study to healing magic, wanting to help people. And one of the like kind of like I guess tee hee ha ha moments about Amaylea is that she actually has a very queasy stomach. So typically when she sees a lot of gore, the reason why she throws up is because the um, the I guess the accident and like murder of Donar is still like innately in her physiological being.
That
Um,
makes me sad for making fun of her now.
well, she also makes fun of it now because she's very far removed from it. There's been quite a bit of time since then.
I
Um,
know, but still.
so yeah, I mean she's also not going to correct anybody. So yeah, so basically when she was 21, they're basically at 21 they're like, girl, you need to get the hell out of this temple. Like go live your life. And so she basically thought that the best place she's like go spread the word, you know. And so when she was 21 she decided like the best place to start was to go back home and search for answers on like basically why her family abandoned her because for basically all of those years she thought that her mom was okay with it, she thought her siblings were okay with it, um, and she thought her dad had just like gone back home. So she was like, I'm gonna go back as an adult and basically be like, hey, this is what like became of me basically.
Mm-hmm.
So when she went back home, she found out that her mother had actually died shortly after she was kidnapped by their father. And her siblings were under the impression that basically their father had abandoned them and taken Amaylea because of like her like omen basically. Um, so while she was home, she basically told her brother like, hey, really happy that you're now the duke or whatever, um, but I will not be coming back to nobility. I don't want my name back. I don't want any of that. um, I actually kind of hate nobility, but I love you guys because we're family. So she rectified her relationships with her siblings. She actually helped her brother stabilize like a financial plan um, by helping him get married to another wealthy woman, and they actually like really care for one another. So she was happy for that. And then she also helped her little sister settle into her life because basically her sister had lost her title as well because she fell in love with a local farmer, and that's generally frowned upon in nobility. So um, basically she was like stripped of her title and she was like, I really don't care. Um, I want to be with my farmer homie, and that's that. So they were married and they had Amelia's niece Lydia, who will come into play very much so in the next couple years. So when she was home, she also was given her mother's journals and a letter from right before her death that was addressed to Amaylea if she ever like returned home or made it back. Um, and that was when she basically discovered that she was born during an eclipse and that her mother believed that she was born for like great things, sort of thing.
So does that mean that Amelia's dad never came back?
No, he never came back.
Okay.
He never
Because
came back to his family. No.
he
Yeah.
never came back to his family because also Amelia's mother had been like, I have a warrant out for that man's arrest. If he ever steps foot onto this land again, I want that man's ass. Okay.
She was ready to throw hands.
She was ready to throw hands.
She didn't want to catch them.
You stole her kid. She got pissed about that. So
Is Amaylea
basic.
the oldest?
No, she's the middle child.
Okay.
So her brother is the oldest, and then she has her younger sister.
Gotcha.
So basically at that point, Amaylea was like, okay, well, I'm going to continue to dedicate like my life to Retris because like there's nothing for me at home now. Like the land is taken care of. I have a good relationship with my siblings, so I'm going to like chill, whatever. And so she had heard that Magnus had been taken. And she was like, okay, well, that's a good like first things first. I guess that's a good like quote unquote starting adventure because I actually have skin in that game because Magnus was always kind to me. Yeah. So I'll help with that. So she basically went into Formosa, the city proper. And this is kind of like when what we call or reference the prologue began for Amaylea. Like I'm pretty sure first session was they were in a tavern and they had all heard that.
Yeah, it was very stereotypical first D&D session. Okay,
Yeah.
you all meet in a tavern.
Yeah,
Yep.
and the queen wants you to go find her son.
Yep.
So what ended up happening was her and like two other people were chosen for it.
Yes.
And so like I said, she was my first character that I had ever made. So when I started that one, I did not make the connection that Amaylea was actually like super close to the prince or anything like that. It was kind of just like, hey, this would be a good starting adventure for me. I can start like trying things out and yada yada yada. So they go on this trip and they found Magnus and brought him back. And on the trip back to the castle, we had the palace, we basically had a lot of like role play opportunity. And so how that kind of like took shape was Amaylea started talking to him more. And then I remember it was like a side conversation with Mars at another time of like, wouldn't they have like known each other? And then we started to unpack it. And she will also be the first to tell you that like Magnus was supposed to be like a minor NPC blip in the story type thing. And then he became very much more. So basically, what's really interesting about it, because like a lot of people since the sessions have started that we've been like streaming and people have been able to know, right? People didn't know that it took like 2 whole acts, like a prologue and an act 1 for Amaylea and Magnus to even be like, hey, I think we have feelings for each other. What is that one sound where it's like, I cannot take another. What is it?
I cannot take one more season of you two
verbally
edging each other. This season, you have to.
That is very much.
That was Sarah.
That was very much, yeah. Sarah had been there for maybe a couple sessions and she was already over it, which was hilarious. Yeah, Sarah literally walked in and was like, no. So basically, Amaylea and Magnus for the entire prologue and majority of Act 1 were basically like a will they, won't they thing, where Amaylea was the only person who spoke to him like a human being and not as the future king of Formosa. And I think that's one of the things that continuously drew Magnus back to her as well. Is that he didn't feel like he had to be like a prince or anything like that. Like he could just be like, I am Magnus, you are Amaylea, we are having a conversation. Um, and so the really big contention, I would say, in the prologue between them was Magnus was like, oh my god, I'm so fucking into you. And Amaylea was like, you know who fucking hates nobility? Me. So majority of their like conversations was Amaylea just like continuing to choose to be arrogant of the fact that he was the Prince of Formosa and is currently. Um, because she wanted to see Magnus as just Magnus. Um, and I think she had a lot. What?
I was just gonna say, I would argue that in the prologue, a big arc for Amaylea specifically was getting over her previous prejudices, not just with Magnus, with nobility, but then we had a whole arc that doesn't matter as much. But they picked up another NPC who was basically a really high-ranking member of the Church of Tenera, which is supposed to be like, oh, so you're like my sworn enemy. But
right,
it ended up being, oh, we're not that different, and it ended up being really good. And I think that was the biggest thing for her during that.
For sure. And I think that one of the things, so that NPC's name was Cassandra, and that was also another level of like Magnus and Amelia's relationship. Is they essentially had like Amaylea was developing feelings for two people, and she did not know how to navigate that at all, because she was like, I have these two people who I'm literally supposed to like hate and have hated their kind for majority of my life, right? Like Magnus being not just nobility but straight up royalty. And then
the highest nobility you can
the
get.
highest fucking nobility you can get. And then Cassandra, who was super high ranking in the Church of Tenera, which is the exact opposite, and they are told very often in the Temple of Retris that like basically people who are a part of the Church of Tenera are going to hate you. Like, period. Because Tenera and Retris hate each other. So she was developing all of these like feelings, and it kind of like manifested at this point where there was a ball. And bless you. At this ball, essentially like you could bring a date. Magnus wimped out. We'll just call it what it is. Magnus wimped out,
Sarah
and Cassandra. No, Sarah was not there to bully him about not doing it. And then Cassandra was like, well, what if we went together? And Amaylea was like,
to be fair, Cassandra also got bullied, but she got bullied by the party at a different point in time.
She did. So basically, Amaylea went to this ball with Cassandra, right? But she still had conflicting feelings of like what path she wanted to take, right?
Also, side note, the big bad for this arc was the god of war, the goddess of war, Eris.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is important soon.
It is indeed. It is indeed. So basically, Eris, when they rescued Magnus from like kind of Eris adjacent. Eris was essentially using his uncle, correct?
Yes, it'd be Rin's brother.
Yeah, so Eris was using his uncle to basically like almost incite war, and basically the old party had like nipped that in the bud because we found him and we brought him back to Formosa, and it's like la-di-da-di-da, right? And so what ended up happening was Eris got upset that her plan got disrupted. And so Amaylea, essentially being who she is and being the cleric of Retris, was essentially like, does your mom know you're like doing this shit, right? Because Retris is the mother of Eris, um, in the way that Retris can be a mother. So what ended up happening at this ball was essentially Eris attacked. And
She rolled up ignorant as hell,
yes,
and
and
the
at the
entire
time,
party.
the party actually had Hecta, the goddess of magic, present with them. Um, and Amaylea had grown really fond of Hecta, um, and almost saw herself as like another sibling to Hecta because she had the connection of Retris. And Retris at that point had been like, "You're my champion. Like, I have no mortals that I care about, but you're my champion." And so Amaylea took that very seriously. Um, and essentially she was like, how will I know if I'm like following the path that you want me to take? And Retris was like, I'll have a way of letting you know. And the way that she let her know was adding white to her hair at different times. So like she woke up from that dream and there was just one strand by her shoulder of just like white hair, right? um and then progressively, like when she was like getting closer to Hecta, when she was like doing certain things, her hair kept getting more white knit, which is why she has white knit now. Um, all of her hair is not white. That is a key thing. Um, so, um, basically, what ended up happening was Amaylea and her group had gone like outside at this ball because there was all these like loud crashing noises and everything, and they saw Eris, a whole ass dragon. And mind you, we were not high level enough to
I
fucking kill a
believe you were
dragon.
level 5
We were level
or
5.
6.
Yeah, we had to be like 5 or 6 because I also remember you being like, okay, y'all actually didn't do like super bad. Like you didn't do great, but you didn't do super bad.
You
And
guys didn't
so
do poorly, but I also used no legendary actions.
right. Um, and so what ended up happening during that was, um, Hecta ended up getting like choosing to be banished to kind of like try and help this group um, with Eris. Um, and the group basically, like, super cool storyline. They get squad wiped anyway. So while they are squad wiped, they wake up in the underworld and um, Amaylea like runs into her mom for the first time since she was like 7. And her mom had essentially been like waiting for all of her children. So um, she's like still gonna wait there for her brother and her sister whenever they come. Um, but basically, I, honest to God, could not tell you, and this is so awful of me. I genuinely can't remember that conversation. So Mars, if you remember even like bits of that conversation, please
Um,
let me know.
well, I can give you the general vibe.
Yeah.
So, basically, what I did was, okay, so when people die, um, in my world, they end up, they have to go basically with whoever their whatever your boatman of choice you can think of. They go across this body of water, and then they make it to the shores of the underworld. And on the shores are a bunch of souls um, who don't want to face the reading of their lives yet,
Mm-hmm.
and so they can wait for a multitude of reasons. But Amelia's mother decided to wait because she wanted to see her children again. Um, Whenever it was they made it to the shores. Um, I remember I had her be extremely happy to see her, but also really sad because she was so young.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember you had Amelia get very emotional about this, but
Right.
I think her mother was like, "Hey, like." She was just happy to see her again
I think
and
it was
to know what
also
became of her. There was a whole
right.
thing where she was telling her like basically what she had done and
Mm-hmm.
up until this point and all this, and she
Yeah.
was happy to hear it.
Yeah, and she was basically like, just because of like what dad did doesn't mean that like my life ended. I mean,
Hmm.
now it obviously did, but not because of that.
Yeah, that was part of
Um,
it where she was like, "You're so young. Why are
yeah,
you
she was
here
like,
already?"
"You're literally 21. Like, what the hell?" So or like early 20s. I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, so basically, um, what ended up happening was she told her mom like a lot of things have like gone well for me. Um, I'm happy, like it's okay. But she was also really struggling with Retris what the fuck at this point. Because she had recently, like very recently, been told that she was like a champion for Retris, and Retris was going to basically have her do really great things in her name. So Amaylea was like gung ho, ready to go, and then her life ended, right?
Mhm.
So when she woke up on the shores of like the underworld, she was kind of like, "What the fuck? I thought you promised me this like life, right?" Um, which played into some stuff for sure. Because what ended up happening was they went to go see Celia. And Celia is the goddess of love. And if you've listened to like our lore talks in the past, she doesn't have like a corporeal form. She looks just kind of what you imagine beauty to look like. So how Amaylea sees her is the image that we have. Um, and she plays a really big role in her life. Sorry, let me skip D. So this is Celia, um, and she is the goddess of love, but she also in the underworld basically reads your scroll. And how it works is she reads through your scroll and basically says like, this is a life well lived. You did good things. Great job. This is where you're headed when you pass through. Um, and so she's kind of like that sort of person. And so what ended up happening was she was starting to read their scrolls and she was like, huh, that's weird. Their scrolls weren't done yet. So she basically went to Dormir and was like, hey, babe, super weird, cool thing happening. Turns out your mom, like, really wants them to come back. And Dormir, being who he is, like, the god of death, um, and the king of the underworld, he was basically like, I really hate that. But if my mom wants it, I guess it's okay. But I'm literally only doing it this one time. Um,
It will not happen
so
again.
what ended up happening, and I do recall this, it's one of my favorite things. Um, Amaylea, knowing that she is the goddess of love, was like, "Hey, can I just like ask you like a quick question since you like read my scroll and stuff?" And Celia's like, "Sure," because she's Celia and she also loves that. So
She's also
Amaylea basically
involved.
asked like, "Who am I supposed to be with? Is it Cass or is it Magnus?" And Celia said, "Hey, super cool thing. Just make a fucking decision." And so she was like, "Okay, damn."
Well, she
So
gave a very generalized answer of make a decision, but it was more her nudging was to be like self love kind of.
yes, yeah, she was like,
Mostly that was
"Love
it.
doesn't
But
just come in like romantic form." um, so what ended up happening is when they came back, um, I'm gonna like really generalize a
go for it.
couple of things. Um, Basically, what ended up happening was Dormir was trying to take over Magnus's body.
Onyx.
Onyx.
Onyx. Who did I say?
You said
Dormir.
Dormir.
Wrong. The god of death
Dormir's
did
not
not try to take over Magnus's body. The god of dreams, Onyx, did. And he wanted to do this because he wanted to have a physical form again. And basically, Amaylea was the person who figured that out first. Like, she was like, "You're acting really weird."
Because, well, while
Mhm.
Amaylea and Magnus were very close, Onyx is not very good at pretending. to
He's
be
not
Magnus.
subtle. Yeah, no. He's like, no, this is just my body now. And it's like, no, you can't just do that. So, basically what ends up happening was, very, very long story short. Amaylea ends up figuring out a way with the goddess of mischief's help of finding Onyx a body so that he can fucking leave Magnus alone. But during that experience, it was the first time that Amaylea really came to terms with the fact that she had very deep-rooted feelings for Magnus. So, she was like, okay, I think I like him, but I'm not going to tell him because I want him to say it first. Because she's just like that. I don't know.
You're playing chicken.
Yep. So, what ends up happening is, they have another party. And,
The previous battle was an auto lose.
yes.
It's very much the equivalent of in a video game when you show up to a level 20 area and you're level 2.
Right.
You
Like,
will die.
You were just gonna die. But then she was like, no, I actually want us to have, like, a party where it's kind of fun and, like, good and stuff. And so at this party, that was when Amaylea saw her father for the first time since he had abandoned her. And casually found out, in the worst way possible, that her father was the left hand of the divine.
Yes.
So Cassandra was the right hand, and she was more, I guess, like the physical presence. While
the right hand is the face. It's the publicity. It's the propaganda. It's this is who you should look up to. The left hand is doing all the shady shit behind the scenes.
Yeah. So, Amaylea was like, that's weird. That's suspicious. So she started looking into it, and she actually discovered that her father was the head of an organization called the Sons of the Divine. And had been for multiple years. So basically, every time they went into the city, he was almost like having secret meetings with these individuals and developing this group, getting it bigger, that sort of thing. And what ended up happening was Amaylea had told the queen, like, hey, that's my dad. Also at the same time, kind of starting to figure out that he tried to kill me when I was 7. In multiple ways. But basically it did come to, like, I guess the light, quote unquote, that he had planned the attack on the Temple of Retris, and that's how he was hoping to basically nix Amaylea. Obviously he was unsuccessful, bitch boy.
Is that the first time that he realized he was unsuccessful, or did he know that?
Yes, indeed. That
Okay.
was the first time. So, basically, Amaylea was like, yeah, we gotta take down this organization because this simply will not do. And around that time was when people started disappearing. And while people were, like, disappearing, people were starting to forget people that they, like, loved and cherished and stuff. Um,
As we
and
referenced in Callie's.
Yeah.
in Callie's, yes. And so Amaylea and her group ended up like doing a deep dive into this, and came to find out that there was I forgot what it's called.
False Hydra.
Yeah, it's a false
Yeah.
Hydra.
So a false Hydra had essentially been taking people, and your memories start to fade of them as long as you listen to its song, basically. And
Which is why Tobias is the only one who didn't forget because he couldn't hear it.
correct, which is so fucking depressing. Anyway,
You sobbing.
Yeah.
right. So, he lost Nihilus, and at the time, we were still relatively new to D&D, I would argue. So we didn't really know, like, well, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions, you know? So we ended up killing the false Hydra, but that also means that none of the souls escaped. So Nihilus ended up dying.
A big part of it, I'll set the scene a little bit
Mm-hmm.
for this particular thing. So they were in like a cavern, and I told them there were a bunch of pods on the wall. I think I mentioned this maybe 2 or 3 times, but you guys weren't. Because part of this whole mess was also the party was trying to continuously remember what they were trying to do, and
Right.
also remember that Cassandra was missing, and
Right.
they kept forgetting her.
Right.
So,
So
that was a big
basically,
thing. They were very worried about that.
yeah, we were really, really worried about Cass. So then what ended up happening was after they beat the false Hydra, and went past it into this like room, Amaylea saw her father basically setting up Cassandra as like a human sacrifice. And Amaylea said, that is going to be a big hell no for me. So they ended up fighting her dad, and once again, consequences of our own actions, not knowing what they were. They ended up killing her father. Well, Amaylea ended up killing her father. And
However, they were standing in the middle of a ritual circle.
correct. So exactly what her father was trying to do with Cassandra's sacrifice, Amaylea, unbeknownst to her, basically did it with him. Yes. And so what ended up happening was one of the party members ended up like completing the ritual, and they awoke the goddess of chaos, who is a primordial and is definitely a part of like our current storyline for sure. So after that, the group kind of.
So I have a question.
Mhm.
Maybe
Yeah.
this is more of like a question about the gods.
Yeah, what's up?
Mhm.
Do the gods not care that the goddess of chaos is awake?
Oh no, they care.
Oh, they care.
But
They
they're
definitely
not.
care.
Care a
They're
lot.
not. They're not doing anything that we know.
No.
of.
That we know of.
This was mentioned in campaign, so I'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
So after the goddess chaos was awoken, that's when all the planes converged, and that's when everyone started freaking out because
Right.
the world is all topsy-turvy.
Right.
There was a scene a little bit later where I believe the party suggested that Cass and Amaylea talk to their respective goddesses to try and see what to do next.
Correct.
There was a question about splitting the planes back up, and then in that, a question about putting the goddess of chaos back to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And their answer was basically the god said, we can do that, but it's going to expend a lot of our energy, and we will have to basically go dark for an unknown amount of time. And they didn't want that, so they said no.
Right.
At the time.
Right.
So we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah. So Um, yeah. So basically, kind of how it all, like, how Act 1 kind of wrapped up was Queen Renata basically said, all right, y'all are now my council, and I need y'all to start going to these other realms that have collided, and we need to basically have like some form of like a call for peace before shit gets worse. Um, and so Amaylea was like, "Yeah, I'm down." And essentially, what ended up happening was the original group disbanded after that. So how we kind of did it was we said that like Amaylea basically woke up and all of her old party members had to go back to where they came from because their original homesteads were like basically upheaved. So Amaylea kind of at the beginning of what we call Act 1, right, of this campaign, was very distrusting of people. And kind of was like, I literally like died with these hoes and they left me. That's crazy. So when Sarah and Callie and Ophame were all like recommended, quote unquote, Amaylea was like, okay, we're literally just going to do our jobs, and that's about all you're going to get from me because I'm really tired of losing people. And that was probably the biggest part of Act 1 for Amaylea, in my opinion, was her confronting her fear of abandonment. So throughout Act 1, because I know we've talked about it kind of in everybody else's, Amaylea was more like, she was a little bit more reserved at the beginning, I would say, and then also was very she was going to play her part of the cleric well, and she was going to make sure that nobody died, and like they were all going to get home, basically.
What was communication with Retris at this moment? Like, what was that relationship like after killing her father, awakening the goddess? Or like, what?
So Retris honestly didn't care that that had happened. Not in like a negative way, but she's kind of like, I don't give a shit what happens to humanity, and that sounds like a y'all problem. But she didn't say that to Amaylea. She basically was just kind of like, I mean, we'd have to go dark, and Amaylea was like, once again, fear of abandonment. Please don't leave. Like, don't leave, right? Because at this point, she had lost her mother, she had lost her original party, and so she felt very like isolated. So essentially, at that point, because I do remember that when she woke up after the goddess of chaos was awakened or whatever, she did have more white in her hair. So we still don't know what that means, but and so Act 1, I would say the biggest things in Act 1 that happened for Amaylea, like I said, fear of abandonment, really a big thing there. She was ally zoned by Magnus. Because basically she was like flirting with him or whatever, and he was like, you're a really great ally, and she was like, what the fuck? And so
that was funny.
Yeah. And so basically Amaylea was like, all right, fuck you, like I don't have time to like be doing all this noise anymore.
This is where Sarah told him that he had royally fucked up.
Yes.
Yes, it's a really good
An
quote.
iconic quote. Um, and um, also at the same time, um, I would say the biggest plot point for Amaylea in that entire act was um, Amaylea discovered that Retris had been taking the credit for something that Celia had done. Um, so essentially, when she was in the temple at 7 and she was saved, um, she saw a woman with black long hair, but like we stated earlier, Celia takes on the appearance of what you believe to be beautiful at that point. And so Amaylea, being in the Temple of Retris and believing that this was like where she should be, believed that Retris had saved her. Um, Celia never explicitly stated, no, it was in fact me, because that's not Celia's style. She really doesn't like, I don't know, she just doesn't do that. Um, so basically, what ended up happening was there was a couple um, moments where her faith was shifting throughout Act 1. Like small little things where she was like, Retris didn't do that for me, Celia did. Retris didn't show up, Celia did, right? Um, Even in a lot of moments where it was like she needed help and Retris didn't show up, but Celia did. Um, and so progressively over that act, her faith started to shift to being a cleric of Celia, the goddess of love. And so essentially there was one part that was kind of at like the most climactic part of that story, which was like the finale basically, um, where Amaylea realized that her magic looked different. Um, and that rocked her fucking world because she had been used to like moonbeam and a whole bunch of stuff like that, and then suddenly all of her magic was fire based, and um, like she could charm people and like all of these things, and she was like, what the fuck is happening to me? And basically Celia was like, you can make a choice because it is entirely up to you. And she was like, do you want me to be your cleric? And Celia was like, I'm not gonna force you to do anything because that's not how I roll. I am not in fact Retris, so I'm not gonna force you to do anything. You just do what you need to do. And then basically Amaylea was like, you've been there for me in my life more than anybody else, so I am going to follow you now. And so she is currently the only cleric that we know of in our spheres that is a cleric of Celia. Um, and so in Act 2, you'll see it a lot where like Amaylea almost has a very conversational relationship with Celia, but that is not what she was like with Retris at all. It was very transactional. It was very like, you tell me what to do. I'm basically just a mindless soldier who's going to follow whatever you say.
You can even still see like moments of anxiety of like, okay, how is Celia gonna react to this? Like, okay, how do I bring this up to her? Okay, how do I like unsure of how that communication's going to go because she was so used to how things went with Retris.
Right. And one of my favorite moments from Act 2 so far was when the group went to fight basically the woman who had been creating the Collar Knights and experimenting on people very, very illegally. Yeah. Basically, when they were there, Amaylea had a moment where, and I actually like really liked that I remembered this in that moment. Basically, okay, because while you are doing a combat scene, right, we know that it's a counter spell, right? Like we know that. Amaylea has never seen that in her lifetime, like a counter spell, right? So basically, when Amaylea tried to do like this, like really, like tried to cast a spell, basically, the woman used counterspell. How Amaylea saw that is I tried to do magic and it did not come out. That's basically how she saw it. So basically what happened later is she meditated and communed with Celia and was like, are you mad at me? Like, is my faith gone? Like, is this like punishment for something that I didn't know that I did? Da 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 da. And Celia was like, whoa, no, she just counterspelled you, and we're good. Like, we're so good. She's like, try your magic right now. Like, literally try your magic right now. And Amaylea did, and it was there. And she was like, I was really scared. And she was like, I need you to know I am not that stupid bitch who's the goddess of the moon. Do not get it twisted. I am not her. And basically, Amaylea was like very vulnerable with her and basically said, like, it's going to take me a while. Because that, like, literally, if you think about it, that is from Amaylea ages like 7 to the end of Act 1, which is like close to like it's at least over like 15 years. So that was what she was taught, like a goddess and her clerics are supposed to be like, because also we need to remember that her only other experiences with clerics are with the Temple of Tenera, and Tenera is very quiet with hers as well. So it's interesting to kind of see that dynamic of like, am I abandoned again? Did I do something? Like, how can I be better? What do I need to do for them? When Celia is very much like, you don't have to do shit for me. Like, you know, whatever. And basically Amaylea was like, well, I need a new outfit that looks like I follow you. And she's like, okay, if you want one. Like, I don't give a shit what you wear, right? But then like she gave her the ones that like represent her colors, and she's like, oh my god, you look so good, you know. So like Celia is very like open and different for Amaylea than what she's used to, and so that dynamic is very interesting for her, because I really like, I have never seen in a campaign, and I'm not acting like I'm the first person to ever come up with it ever in the history of forever. I'm not doing that. But I really liked this idea, and I remember talking through it with Mars a lot of, okay, clerics are a faith-based magic, right?
Yes.
If they still have the same level of faith just for a different god or patron, they still have that level of cleric, right? That level of faith and magic, basically. It just looks different. And so it was really fun to like play that dynamic of shifting from like magic that looked like this to magic that looked super different, right? And how that would kind of like fuck with her brain. So I really enjoyed doing that. I don't know. Did I miss things? I feel like I've missed so much.
Like, Retris is just okay, and it's just like,
we don't know because Retris has not communicated with her.
Retris went quiet, and Scarlett has in fact asked me. I don't know if she asked me while you guys were all here, but she asked me, "The Retris is just cool with this," and I was like,
I didn't say cool with it. I did say, like, I made a lot of arguments. Okay, because I have a lot of theories just like about the gods, because I love being a cleric. So basically, like, one of my theories that I threw out was like, Retris still does not give a shit about humanity.
Right.
She doesn't care. So when Amaylea was like, hey, like, I don't follow you anymore, she kind of was like, oh, this like piece of dust that I barely cared for, cool, bye. Like, I almost see it as like Retris is kind of like, she's not cool with it, but she's not like, she would not take that personally, because she'd be like,
well,
if she took it personally, she would have to give a shit about Amaylea, which I don't think she did, because none of her actions showed that.
Well, to answer as vaguely as I possibly can, Retris does not care about Amaylea as a person, no. But she did, on some level, care about her as a possession.
Love that journey for me. Okay.
Yep, it's gonna be really fun. basically, and she already has beef with Celia. We know this. This is old beef. This is like ancient beef that has been in existence far before anybody was even thought of.
Indeed.
So she
But
feels like Celia took my things.
I don't care
so
about the fact that it's a person and this person made a choice to not follow me anymore.
She doesn't give a shit
Celia
about
took
that. She doesn't give a shit about that.
correct.
Right.
Celia took
But
my
I
things.
do think that Celia and Retris, if Amaylea ever comes up, um, Celia
do not
definitely reminds her of.
Mhm.
I think you forget that you're taking credit for everything that I did, so don't get it twisted, like sort of thing, and that probably pisses off Retris a lot more. um, I don't know. There's a lot to unpack with like Retris period, and if y'all want to go back and look at our lore talk about the gods, we talked about definitely some of Celia and Retris's beef, so that can make more sense to you.
For sure.
But I
I
think
don't think you missed much. Act 2 is
okay,
ongoing.
yes,
Um, for right now in Act 2, Amaylea hasn't had as big arcs as I planned in the previous ones, but that's just because they haven't come up yet. And we're also in a foreign land.
Yeah.
So there's not much for her specific storyline at the moment.
Mhm.
However, what I did want to like, I guess, circle back to whatever, since we're in a teams meeting, we're gonna circle back. We're gonna talk about. I would like you to talk about Amelia's relationships that she's fostered with her new group.
Oh, yeah. Um,
Mhm.
so, I feel like, okay, because, like, kind of in reality, I feel like, because Amaylea had already kind of, like, developed herself in the world when this
Mhm.
group started, a lot of it kind of, like, centered around the group coming to Amaylea, basically, to form the Queen's Council. And so, like, I think at first it was almost natural for all of us, and, like, y'all please speak into it because, like, I might just be making stuff up. But um, I do think it was almost like natural for us, both, like, in real life and in the story, to kind of follow Amelia's lead until they established their characters within the world.
Definitely.
And so now that like they're super established in the world, it doesn't feel like Amaylea is taking as much of a lead as like she did in like I would say Act 1, right? Because I feel like Act 1 it was kind of like Amaylea was like, "We need to go here," and everyone was like, "Okay," and then like they just kind of like we just kind of did those things. But now it's kind of
Yes.
like
By now in Act 2, I definitely feel
everybody
like
in the group,
everyone has their own thing that they're
Mhm.
doing.
right?
It's integrated into the story,
And
and I'm really
so
happy about it.
it makes the story like really really cool. Um, and I feel like Amelia's relationships with each person in the party um, is different because she has like different interactions. Like they should be different relationships because they're different people, right? Um, so like I feel like she connected first with Sarah because Sarah kind of came in and was like, "I'm your best friend now," so that's that.
Deal with
And
it.
basically, Amaylea was like, "Okay, I've heard people say that before, but like we'll see if that sticks." Um,
I know
and
we always make the
it's
joke that
stuck.
girl talk is always in Amelia's room, but if I remember correctly, I think it was Sarah's idea to have it in Amelia's room, and
Correct.
Amelia was like, "Why?" But she said, "We're
Yes.
doing this," and it
Yeah.
just became a
Well, I
thing.
think at the time, Amelia had the bigger room.
Correct.
Maybe I'm not
That's what
sure.
it was. But
Was
we
it?
all had like guest rooms, which was like a bed and a bathroom. But
Mm-hmm.
Amelia had
Mhm.
like a more permanent guest room.
Because she had
So
been
she had
there.
a so she had
Well,
like a
she
sitting
also
area.
was like she also had like a room since she was like the only member of the Queen's Council at that point.
But she was
Mhm.
also
Um,
living there.
Yeah, so she was like full time living at the palace, and they were like, I
Yeah.
guess we could give you a better room that's a little bit more permanent. Um, so um, basically, she connected with Sarah because Sarah broke through the walls, I would say, the fastest. Um, and was a little bit more like, no, 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 like, we're gonna do this friendship thing, and like, this hoe that keeps calling you an ally, I will, in fact, bully him until he gets his shit straight.
Well, I think also like Ofame was just trying to learn how to
Be in the
be and
world. Yeah.
Yeah.
right. And so like
Which that's why I think her relationship with Ofame was more like mentor-ish,
right.
where it wasn't necessarily like mentor in how to fight or magic or anything like that, because it wasn't that. But it
Right.
was more like mentor of like, I know Formosa
Right.
inside out, right?
Right.
And I'm not just gonna teach you like how to be a good citizen, because like who gives a shit, but like here's things that like you will interact with in your life, and if you have questions, I'm not going to judge you for having questions, because I also was in the Temple of Retris, and I think that's her biggest connection with Ofame, is that
They were both
Amaylea
in
wasn't,
cults.
ma'am,
I'm
um
listening.
basically like
Change my mind.
Amaylea wasn't so much in a cult that demanded things from her like Ophame's was. Um, but it was like she had a little bit more freedom, but she very much gets the brainwashing of like, this is what the world is, right? And then basically when you leave that space for the first time, you're like, wait, it's not that actually, right? Um, so she really connected with Ofame of the like, hey, I get what it's like to be told your whole life that something is one way when it is not. It is not black and white. Often it is very gray, right? Um, and so her connection with Ofame was a little bit more relational of like understanding the upbringing, not necessarily in the sense of like the intense shit that what Ofame went through, but the like, I know what it means to be devoted to this god, and how does that shift when you actually start to see the realities of the world around you. Um, Also, both of them had been basically wiped out by the sons of the divine. So Amaylea was like, I also understand that. Um, so
Twins.
yeah, and then Callie um, was more of like, I saw at the beginning of their kind of like relationship, I felt that it was very protective of like, I care for Tobias on such a deep level, and I still have the guilt of not bringing Nihilus back to him. Um, but over time, that's changed from being protective to like really believing that like Callie has insight that um, she can track with, because sometimes like with other people in the party, I feel that she cannot track their rationale, but she's like, they are who they are, and that is what that is. But
And we
Callie,
accept it, but
maybe Callie's cooking with like 2 brain cells when everybody else only has
At
one.
least.
Um, so, um, but I think the common thread that Amaylea has developed with this group over time is ultimately respect for each of them as individuals. Um, Amaylea really respects what each and every one of them brings to the table, and actually loves that none of them are exactly like her. Um, so I feel like her relationships with the group, I mean, like we've talked about it before on like this,
Different lore casts, yeah.
right? I feel like we've had moments where we're talking to um like we're talking basically about like the world and everything like that, but we've also talked about the realities of us as like individuals, and how the closer we get, the more authentic our characters kind of become, I feel. Which has been really really fun, because I've never had that, so it's really dope. um, Also, I feel like I would be remiss if I did not talk about Lydia.
Almost forgot.
The ADHD finally kicked in.
Amelia's
My protege.
daughter.
Yeah.
Basically, at this point.
So Lydia is her niece. Um, and essentially what happened is during the Catalyst War that ended Act 1, um, Lydia's father passed away or was killed in a raid of the farmland, basically. And Lydia's mother and Amelia's younger sister basically went into grief that sent her into hysterics. So essentially, what Amaylea has done over the last few years is basically like take Lydia under her wing, and be like, "Hey, listen, you're gonna come to Formosa. We're gonna have a lot better of a relationship, so that your mother can grieve properly, um, and I am going to pay for your tuition to go to school. We're going to have you start getting an education. We're going to start working." And basically, Lydia was like, "Hey, I never want to feel helpless again." And Amaylea said, "Oop, PTSD from the time that I felt helpless, being unable to save Donar." So she said, "Okay, we'll start training as well." So Lydia has shown signs of being a magic user. And slowly over time, like Amaylea has tried to help in the ways that she can, but she's a cleric, so the magic looks a little different. But is essentially like, hey, you have these magical abilities within you, so let's kind of like unpack that, right? And then also, specifically throughout this campaign and a lot of the last one, this group has kind of like connected with Lydia, and like her and Dante have developed a little bit of a little young crush relationship in
Friendship.
Yeah, because
the best
in
capacity
Act 2,
that teenagers can.
yeah, but like
Yeah.
okay, so we're in Act 2. Um, she's obviously like right in the midst of her teens. She's being a teenage girl, Your Honor.
Yep.
But in Act 1 and in a little bit in the prologue of actually 2, she was probably around 9 or 10. Um, you wouldn't know it, but she was a very quiet kid, very
Right.
introspective, but very inquisitive, very smart. So what ended up happening was that raid definitely left a mark on her. So we talked about it to some that like the fact that she's being quote unquote normal as of now is already a boon and says a lot about Amelia's influence on her up until this point.
Right. There's been a lot of moments in this past um, act where basically Amaylea has decided to be a little bit of like a little bit more gracious with Lydia, because she understands that Lydia feels stuck, and she doesn't obviously want her niece to feel that way, but also um, she's very. They've had a lot of like really good heart to hearts that I'm actually kind of sad have never been recorded.
Stream.
Yeah. But Amaylea genuinely cares for Lydia and wants what's best for her, like first and foremost, because she never really had a singular mother figure who taught her how to walk through womanhood. Like, literally never. And she, because of her sister's mental state currently, knows that her sister does not have the capacity to do that for Lydia. So, instead, what it's kind of become is I feel that Lydia has also attached to Amaylea, and has even like said things like, "Well, I just always I always anticipate that like you're gonna fix it. Like she feels like Amaylea is constantly going to fix whatever is broken or wrong. Um, and even though that's a lot of pressure on Amaylea, she wants to keep that idea alive in Lydia for as long as she possibly can. So I think that people also need to understand that that's like one of the really big drivers for Amaylea is like whenever she is talking to Lydia, um, she's kind of like, hey, I'll fix this, but you have to also like help me out, right? And so their relationship is really, really special. I actually really love her relationship with Lydia. Um, I'm not even a mother, but I love their relationship, like a mother-daughter relationship.
I feel like we always joke within the group that at least like Lydia is Amelia's kid in the same way Dante is Ophime's kid.
Right.
But it's really fun because like it's like congratulations, you've adopted teenagers. Immediately.
Congratulations. It will be chaotic. Just simply will.
It's like I'm gonna go do what I want. Excuse me.
Wait, run it back. Yeah, as if we were not teenagers who did the exact same shit.
That's why to me it's fun playing.
Yeah, that's why it's hilarious.
But it's also like hard.
It's because
it's hard.
hypocritical as hell.
No, because I'm just trying to strike the balance between this childlike thought process and then also you do understand some things and you want to be bigger than you are. So it's hard to like tap into that because I don't feel too removed from it, but I'm a bit removed from it. So I'm trying to get in that headspace when I play her. Dante is different because he's just a special case.
He's just special, period. Yeah. Do y'all have any like questions? Because like that might help me with
open for questions.
Just because like I might be like forgetting things.
There's just so much shit in my brain, and I'm
all the time.
I'm not allowing myself to talk about most of the things I want to because I'll get off topic.
Yeah.
Have you thought about the potential fallout when she inevitably fails, Lydia?
You mean never?
What? That's a really intense question. Thank you, Loran.
Damn.
Scarlett, how do you think about Jesus Christ?
I'm like,
great
how
question.
do I start? Am I gonna start crying about a hypothetical right now? Maybe.
Fictional character, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the first time. But I mean, I think no, because I don't know what that scenario would be.
Yeah.
Because as of right now, Amaylea is basically trying to protect Lydia at all costs, and if there ever comes a time where essentially Lydia goes against her, which that time will come because it's already happened before, but like if that time comes and then something really bad happens to Lydia, right? Like she gets injured or she gets lost for a period of time or something like that, right? I think Amaylea, that would be more of her trying to like calm herself as well, because they've had the relationship and the conversations that they've had very recently of like, you do know that like it is a part of my character that I want to do what's best for you. Right. And Lydia's like, yes. And she goes, then you need to not ever lie to me. Like, I understand that you're going to lie to me about certain things because, like, you don't want to talk about them. But things
cool
that...
to talk to...
Right. But the things that, like...
There's a line.
I am telling you will protect you. Right. I need you to not lie about those things. And at this point, I feel like their relationship is good enough that I think that fallout won't happen until she's older, because she'll start to realize like, oh, adults are flawed. Right. Like I'm an adult, and that's that like natural phase of life as well. Is like when you're a kid, you're like, oh my gosh, my parents are amazing and perfect, right? And then you grow up and you're like, wait, no, they're not. right? Like they make mistakes and they're not always right. And
Yeah, because she's still at the place, like you're saying, she's still at the place. She hasn't quite made the connections necessary to see Amaylea as a full person.
No, but I think
Not
that
in a
that'll
bad
happen
way,
when
but,
she's
like,
older, like goes on her first full adventure and is like, maybe Aunt Amelia made some fucking mistakes when I was a kid, you know?
maybe.
She has to pay for my therapy, and Amelia's like, that's fair. But like, yeah, I don't think that it'll happen.
My mind. You might not have an answer for it, but just put it on your mind. You guys are gonna go up against some interesting things in the near future.
Right.
I don't know if you've put any thought to what it could look like in a reality where she loses Amaylea at this age.
No. What?
We can move on.
Are you suggesting that one of us is gonna die?
It's possible.
It's possible?
Anything is possible.
Bro, chat, if y'all could see my face right now, I'm like that white guy just blinking. My mouth is agape.
Your flappers are gasted.
Indeed.
Love you.
Wait. Okay, wait. Run it back. Okay, because we also made.
Yeah.
We had a conversation that no one in the party will die. Permanently.
Permanently? When?
When we did our consent form.
I'm gonna double check that.
Okay, so at this
That's actually cuckoo fucking bananas that came out of your mouth right now.
I need to double check it.
Oh my god.
That's my answer. I need to double check.
Wait, no.
Oh my god.
Okay, guys. Well, I have to start pulling together a new character sheet.
That's not what I mean. What I mean is we're reaching the end of, like, when we get to the end of Act 3, basically. When you guys get to
3 years?
Yeah, for real.
I don't know.
We're not gonna. If you think about it, our characters are not going to be that much older at the end of Act 3.
No.
Especially in the realm of, like, how long most of us are going to live for.
Correct.
So if something happens at the end of Act 3 where most of us die and or some of us die.
In the quote-unquote end of you guys' story.
Right. Hopefully won't be the end of our life, but it could be.
I don't
and
think
if it
Cal
is,
can survive another loss.
Yeah. That's just I just want to plant that seed. For
Guys,
everybody.
I feel like my DM does not
but
cognitively realize how fucking sensitive I am.
We need happy endings.
Listen. I would love a happy ending.
For real right now if you tell me that we're all gonna die at the end of the campaign, because I'm
not telling you.
Rage quit and never talk to any of you ever again.
Loran, I'm not saying that you're all gonna die. That's not what I said.
Sorry,
what
babe,
I'm saying
you're not allowed to
is
leave the group.
When you get, love you too
You're
much.
in too deep now.
Okay. Let me explain a little bit better. So by the end of the campaign, when you face the biggest thing I'm gonna throw at you, you will be high level. You will have all of your allies that you've accumulated up until this point, given anything weird happens. I'm saying something weird because I don't have nothing planned that would purposely kill off NPCs.
Are you giving us Tiamat?
What? No.
It's a homebrew, babe.
I'm not gonna. No, it's a homebrew. I'm not gonna give you that. Okay.
Anyway,
it's Tiamat mixed with a Tarask.
Morgan.
Jesus, chill.
Morgan. What I'm saying is, you'll be high level. You'll have your friends that you've accumulated up to this point. Hopefully, you like all of that will be in place. I feel as though because the way you guys play, you'll be well prepared for this battle. Depending on how that battle goes, like, yeah, you could lose your characters, but you'll be rolling a new character because it'll be the climax of this story. It'll be the end point, the thing you've been working up to all of this time. Don't worry, it'll be like in 2 years. But with that in mind,
still too soon.
Y'all remember when she maybe 5 minutes ago was like, "Hey, I'm trying not to say things because I don't
know.
want to.
I'm being so vague right now. It's
I
painful.
know.
I'm being very vague.
She basically just wanted us to sit on that for 2 years. That's what this bitch is doing.
I've had to sit on it for longer.
Okay, well, you chose to be a DM and write a really good fucking story. That's not our problem.
I didn't choose it. I wanted to be a player, but no one wanted to DM, so now I'm a DM.
It
I
was
love you, though.
your campaign. It's your homebrew. Nobody can DM it.
I know.
Anyway.
Maybe if I got it on paper, maybe someone could. But
Anyways.
I want to segue. I want to
DM a
segue.
campaign in like 2 years.
I want to segue. I was gonna ask you about Amelia's dynamic with Ren.
Okay.
And how anything you really want to say about it, really. Because we don't have Ren show up a lot in our campaign right now because again, they're in another kingdom and they've been in other kingdoms for a while.
I feel like that wouldn't be fair for us to always have a level 20 sorcerer like on deck.
I can't just give you someone who can power word kill all the time. I'm not gonna do that. But Ren is an essential part of like the world, so.
So Ren, when her and Magnus were like, I guess flirting or whatever, I will literally always remember that there was one conversation where essentially Amaylea like went in and was talking to her about like just like politic type stuff.
She called her to her office to talk about actual things.
Yes. And then basically Amaylea was like, "Is there anything else that you might need of me, Your Highness?" And she goes, "So man, I can't remember if she asked.
A busybody.
I don't mean to pry. However, I can't remember if she was talking about Magnus's feelings or Amelia's.
Oh no, she was talking about Magnus. She had no clue about how Amaylea felt one way or the other.
That's right. That's right. She was basically like, "So I've heard that my son is interested in you," and Amaylea was like, "What?"
Heard from where?
Yeah, heard from where? And she's like, "Just don't worry about it." And then basically, in that conversation, Amaylea was like, "Okay, like hypothetically speaking, even if I did, would you want someone like me with your son?" And she's like, "Abso-fucking-lutely." And I remember that like meant a lot to Amaylea, not because she was the queen, but because it was someone who like is really influential in her life. I also feel like Ren has been for Amaylea almost as like I don't even want to say a mentor, but very much like
maternal-esque figure.
Maternal-esque for sure, but I think mainly like her biggest supporter. Like you're learning, it's okay, we can grow through this, like tell me what's going on, I'm not going to judge you about things, like, you know, just kind of like walk me through your stuff and all of that. And Amaylea, probably more than any other figure in the world that they are in, Amaylea respects Ren's word over everybody else because Ren, she feels like Ren has got shit figured out. She probably doesn't, but Amaylea feels she does. So she's really dedicated to that bit
with Ren,
for sure.
And I mentioned it a couple times, and I'll go more into detail about it when we do some of our NPC lore talks. But Ren inadvertently has become mother hen for a lot of them.
Yeah.
Like she has correspondence with Anna. I feel like Marianne would probably benefit from correspondence with Ren as well.
Probably.
But I think that Ren kind of views a lot of the relationships she has garnered with, like, for example, Anna and a lot of people in the group. Is just like she sees a version of herself at that age in you. And so she's like, well, if I can help them not make my mistakes, that'd be cool.
Right. I also feel like, I don't know, Ren's just like the biggest baddie to ever do it.
True.
So, I mean, Amaylea basically just sees that way because I see it that way.
Okay.
So that's helpful, I guess.
And for the folks at home, Ren was the OG. Ren was the first character. The whole world came from just her as a character.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that.
We'll
I'll probably
unpack
talk
that.
about her first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. If there's anything else, I know that you guys might have questions for Scarlett. I'm all out of ominous things to say and questions.
Bitch.
Thank
I
God.
can't believe you did that.
Love you.
Still wild.
Mean it.
Yeah. Do y'all have any other questions for her?
I don't
I feel like I hit a
I don't
lot.
think so.
This was a very long session. I apologize
Yeah.
for that.
There was a lot to cover.
But to be fair, she's probably one of the longest running PCs.
sure.
So
She
she
is.
has a lot to unpack.
Not one of. She is the.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yes. But yeah, like I've really enjoyed playing Amaylea, and if anybody has started playing D&D, you have come to realize that your first PC is like your baby, and like you really grow attached to them, and like you start thinking about them as like their own entity almost. And like I very much at the beginning had Amaylea be an extension of me because that was the easiest to, I guess, play because it's easy to play a game when you're basically making choices that you would make. And she's very much taken on a life of her own for me, because I feel like now I put into consideration the things that she's been through, the things that she's seen, how she would react, not necessarily how I would. What decision would she make? Who would she listen to? Who would she care about? That sort of thing. And so it's been really fun to not just be, dependent on what choices I would make, but what choices would Amaylea make. But if you have any questions about Amaylea, you should go ask them in our Discord. And even if it's not a question about Amaylea and it's a question about the world or any of the other PCs like Sarah and Callie and Ofame, who we have done theirs, please ask questions on the Discord. But also, if you have not watched those videos yet, they are all uploaded into YouTube, which is linked right down below this video. And if you just while you're moseying on down there, you would also like to click the button for our TikTok and Instagram. A follow goes a really, really long way. But we are having a ton of fun just expanding this world for you guys so that you can have a lot of content to choose from and digest as you see fit with the time that you have. But if we do not have any questions, which I'm not really seeing anything in the chat, but if y'all don't have any questions, we will see y'all this coming Monday at 8 p.m. Central. Yeah. Love you guys. And this was a blast, and I'm glad we did it.
Hell yeah.
All right. See y'all Monday.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.